Hi everyone. It's been a very long day and it's very lot of interesting discussions. I only have 10 minutes, so let me start without hesitation. Before I start, actually, just after today, there's a Curation Markets meetup just around the corner. So there we can discuss more, so I don't have a lot of time. So let me just try get through this. So for those that don't know me, I'm Simon. I've been working in the blockchain space for a few years. I've been primarily working a lot on tokens, tokenization, the creation of new ways to curate information. And Curation Markets is part of writing that I've done a lot and research. So over the past 2 years, a lot of projects have come forth that uses Curation Markets. And so I thought it'd be useful just to collect the projects that are out there and just explain what they do to give you a context. But first off, for those who are not familiar, what are curation markets? I define curation markets as primarily a subset of crypto economics that curate information. So this is supposed to be sort of subjective games where people work together, where they literally put their money where their mouth is in order to bubble up novel information, whether it's for governance questions or trading internet memes, whatever you think could be possible with this. And I broadly categorize them in two different ones, which is either sort of continuous staking systems, as in like I believe this is truthful, and this uses bonding curves. If this is also jargon, I'm sorry, there's a lot of jargon in this space. And the other one is called what I define as staked slashing shelling games. I like alliteration. So that is things like token curated registries where you have another authority or a group of people that you stake something towards and they are the sort of mediator to say this is correct or not correct. Over the course of the past 2 years where these things have been developed, the definition has become a bit broader, and so it's sometimes difficult to define what is part of this definition. And so I generally try to just include currently, because much of this is still in its infancy, rather a constellation of projects and ideas. For example, could one include governance and curation of proposals in this definition? Could one include funding as curation? Like, what does the market believe should exist? Is prediction markets part of this definition? What about new kinds of market makers where you get new forms of price discovery, like Uniswap's constant product market model? So it's still unclear to me, and that's part of the process of working through this and projects being built. But I included some projects that do fall under these definitions. So like I said before, this talk is literally just giving you an example of projects that are out there. There's quite a bunch. Unfortunately, didn't get time to actually get like a lot of screenshots because I think that's usually a good visual aid, but didn't have too much time. But I will make the slides public so you can go look at all the things that are out there. Some of it, I try to make it at least up to date because a lot of projects announce things and then they don't do anything. So these are things that I would regard as fairly up to date. So first off, talking about continuous staking games, there are two projects that are in the mainnet. One is Convergent by Logan, sitting there, and Akil, which allows people to issue their own personal tokens through this continuous staking method where you create a funding model for people. Convergent allows you to specify a use case, so it could be for curation, as in like, what information should I read and people pay me with my personal token. Zap is a project for oracles curation. I'm not always sure exactly where they are in their process because I haven't issued recent updates, but apparently it's on mainnet. I've tried playing with it, but it's been a bit difficult to understand the user experience. But these are things that are purportedly on mainnet. And then there's a lot of projects that are either in testnet, proof of concept, or in development related to continuous staking games. I'll go through a bunch of them, but there's like a class of projects that I think a lot of people are doing, which is things like band protocol, common interests. Protea is another example where essentially there are communities that are through this continuous staking game, creating their own tokens of value, and thus they can create their own sort of wealth amongst them, and then also use the token to curate things that are important to them. Like, I believe we should do this, and then I'm staking X amount of tokens towards that. And, sorry, I apologize. So band protocols that like that, common interests like Proteus like that, so there's a bunch of them that do that kind of tokenizing communities projects. Probably one of my favorite ones here is Meme Lords. It was a project that is on Rinkeby. It allows you to trade dank internet memes, and it was on Rinkeby, and it actually works. And it was quite funny to see, because it actually did bubble up interesting novel information, and it's still on Rinkeby. I've been pushing the team to launch it to mainnet, but everything's open source, so maybe I should just deploy the contracts to mainnet, and then we can trade some funny internet memes. Ocean Protocol is probably one of the biggest projects in this space. They are using curation markets to curate the popularity of data sets. So every data set would have a token associated, a derivative token associated, in order to signal how valuable this data set is. What are other ones? Good catch. TradeStars is a fantasy football trading game. So you trade the popularity of football players, for example. So there's a bunch of different examples. Then these class of projects I would more classify as mainly as using some of these primitives for new novel forms of funding. So one of that is like proof of weekends. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. Thibault's continuous organization, which we just explained it in the other venue. Molecules, interesting one, because it sort of tries to bubble up novel pharmaceutical IP at the early stages in order to get people to invest in them and reduce the sort of cost to get pharmaceutical drugs to the mainstream. R-Loop is interesting because it's the team that did one of the teams building the Hyperloop discovered the stuff and thought it would be also a good idea to decentralize the funding and curation of engineering projects. So that's also a good example. So there's a bunch of different things that are more related to innovating and funding. Nexus Mutual is related to using these models for insurance products. So there's a bunch of interesting ones out there. Then with regards to stake slashing shelling games, I like saying that, is most of them are TCRs or token curated registries. And the ones that are mainnet is Foam, which does this for curating points of interest on a map. AdChain is for curating reputable publishers and publishers. Civil Registry, which is soft launching now, is for curating ethical newsrooms. And then DAO Stack is another example as well, where predictors put sort of stake in saying these are relevant proposals for an organization, and then the organization would then either vote. If the proposals are accepted, they get a reward for participating in boosting relevant information for various forms of organizations. Then some that are in development, TCR Party is sort of using this for curating a list of crypto Twitter people, which was quite fun to watch. Then there's other ones like True Story, which is trying to reduce fake news. Made Credits is for curating a list of physicians. So there's a bunch of different interesting things that people are trying, and there's a lot of them currently out there in various forums that you can go take a look at. But the discourse is part of it. People are experimenting in different ways and seeing what happens. These ones are other notable ones which I found was interesting. These are both related to sort of entertainment to get people to play with these things. So these are a bunch of examples that people are building with these ideas. It is still relatively in its infancy, although a lot of projects have been written. People have written to like creating batch bonding curves to there's new articles coming out about short selling some of these ideas. So there's a broad ways in which we can use these things to sort of reduce information asymmetry and curate information. So next up is people going live. 2019 should be a year where more of these projects are going live. We'll be able to learn from them and see how people interact with them. And I think probably more important is, although this is the kind of community that enjoys talking and discussing these things, where from technical and economic perspective, I think a lot of the usefulness will come when we're actually doing or focusing on user experience. Design is going to be very important because you have to explain to the user, these are some new economics, like how is this meaningful to me and how is this useful for other people. Which is why I've also recommended people think about different ways of doing it, which is these things aren't supposed to work today for 100 years. It can work tomorrow for a 2-month experiment. So I think that should be interesting to see what happens. I'm going to put the slides up. So there's a bunch of links you can go check out. There's a lot of code. People have been building a lot of code. Simulators, agent-based modeling. So there's a lot of research being done. So the next step is just going live with these ideas. So that's my talk. I think my time is definitely up, so we can get done with the day. I think it's better if you have questions to just catch me afterwards or go to the Curation Markets meetup where we'll have beers and talk a lot more about these ideas. So the meetup is, if you go on the Blockchain Week France thing, you can see it's there. It's like literally behind the venue. So there will be beers and we can talk about these ideas. So thank you very much, and I'll give over to Vinay.